A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they'll never sit in. One could say that is the very essence of humanity, making sure the next generation are able to continue well after you're gone. But there is a subtle kind of sadness that comes with that. Most of us will never have to reckon with that feeling in any serious way. The average person sets goals they expect to see through. We start things we plan to finish, even those who procrastinate like crazy eventually reach those goals one way or the other. But the idea that you could dedicate your entire life to something, putting every ounce of your energy, your resources, and in some cases, your very life, and never seeing it become real is kind of scary and really difficult to come to terms with. An orb on the movement of the earth embodies that feeling. For those who haven't heard of it, Orb on the Movement of the Earth is a series set in 15th century Europe in the fictional kingdom of P during the height of the Catholic Church's power and follows a series of characters across different times who come in contact with this idea so dangerous it's considered heresy. Heliocentrism, the idea that the Earth moves around the Sun rather than the other way around. Something we were all taught in primary school and has become so obvious to us now that it feels absurd to think otherwise. But it's something people died over way back then, a fact that Orb takes seriously, weaving such a masterpiece of a story that it ends up leaving a mark on your very soul. It isn't some story about a genius underdog who sticks it to the system, proving the truth of the cosmos to the entire world, triumphing over the evil church in the same way a JRPG would. It's a story about what happens when people carry a truth the world isn't ready for, and the burden that comes with carrying that legacy along to the next generation. As usual, I will be discussing major plot points in the anime, so if you haven't seen it yet, maybe pause this video and go binge it, and then come back. This is a 10 out of 10 watch, so if you've been looking for the right push to watch it, now would be a good time. You have been warned. The first thing that Orb does to set it apart is its structure. Most series that span generations, like JoJo's, anchor you to a central protagonist whose journey you'll experience from start to end, seeing the world from their perspective. But Orb doesn't do that. There is no set main character. Instead, it gives you a cast of characters across different time periods following different walks of life, each with their own struggles and unique opinions, who have their life drastically changed when they all come across that forbidden idea, carrying it along with them before passing it on, or dying with it, and in some cases, both. Because what Orb is saying from the start is that this idea, heliocentrism, the truth that the earth moves, doesn't belong to just one person. It's a truth that cannot be gatekept and will eventually find its way out into the world one way or the other. It moves through people the same way ideas have moved through history, imperfectly across generations. Each person who comes across it adding their own touch to it and refining it ever so slightly before moving on to the next person, never really knowing the names of the individuals who helped to bring it to where it is now. That's kind of brutal when you think about it, because every person in this who sacrifices something for the truth is doing so for complete strangers they will never meet, for a future they'll never see, for a world that won't even remember them. And the anime asks if that's enough. Let's talk about Rafal, because he's where the story begins and in a lot of ways sets the emotional templates for everyone who comes after him. Rafal is a young genius who's on track to living his best life. His way of life involves being the ultimate yes man, playing to people's egos and telling them exactly what they want to hear, also it can lead him down the path of least resistance. This has worked so well for him, he's even about to enter university at the age of 14. But then he encounters Hubert, who introduces him to heliocentrism, lighting the fire in him, fueling his curiosity and truly opening his mind. A discovery that was seen as liberating to the young boy is soon snuffed out by the burden that comes with knowing that truth. Because the moment Rafal comes in contact with that stone chest and the materials within it, he understands what it means to know, and understands that the world isn't ready for such a truth that sounds outlandish. But despite all that, despite a bit of him wishing he had never learnt about it, he can't help but fall in love with the beauty of heliocentrism, as risky as it may be. Rafal chooses to accept this truth knowing how much harder it would make his life, but for once, he chooses himself first, rather than play to the status quo he had used to get so far in life. The idea that knowledge can be some kind of weight is such a real and unexplored feeling. Just because you understand something to be true doesn't automatically give you the courage to do anything about it. Rafal understands his powerlessness and makes peace with it early on. He knows that he won't be the one to prove the truth of the world and revolutionize the church in his lifetime, and does what he can to keep the idea alive long enough to hand it down to the next person. When he finally gets caught by the church and is jailed, he has one final moment with the antagonist of the story, Novak. More on him later. Novak can't help but wonder why he would give up his chance at freedom and a bright future for his ideals. Rafal is a boy who had spent his life basically lying to everyone and himself just so he could live a simple and comfortable life, basically serving people for what I can best call a selfish reason. He finally chooses to be true to himself and put himself first, understanding he exists for the bigger picture, despite everything. Yeah, he dies still serving people, but now it's from a place of hope for the future. He plants the tree he never gets to sit under. Something Novak can't understand because of the way he is. That is the emotional core of everything Orb is about. And that emotional core will hit you in the gut so many times you'll be left emotionally wrecked by the end of the series. Orb never tries to pretend that these great sacrifices in the name of truth and ideals are okay. It doesn't give you noble character deaths with final words that resonate across time and space. It never feels like the suffering the characters have gone through are meaningful in any way, or contributing to the greater plan of getting the truth out there. I went into the anime partially blind, and when I watched the scene where Rafal was facing trial for his blasphemy, I was expecting him to make a grand speech that would rally the people in court, passing on the flames of truth like All Might. But that never happened, and I bawled my eyes out when he met his quiet end. This is how a lot of the deaths in Orb are like. They are abrupt, ruthless, and low-key unfair. Characters you quickly warm up to in such a short time are snuffed out by a circumstance or by bad luck by a system that doesn't care about their inner lives at all. All the characters die without ever knowing or seeing their goals accomplished, and what's worse, they leave even less behind for the next generation. They are unable to nurture the tree, and that shit is painful as hell. But weirdly enough, what this did was make the characters' lives have more weight in my eyes. Take Badini for example. Upon coming across the materials on heliocentrism, he is determined to bring this theory to life, using the knowledge and records of his predecessors to improve and make it concrete. But this man is such a selfish dude. He takes everything that came before him as his own, virtually erasing the names of the people of the past, and planned to publish it all under his name. He wanted to be the sole mover of this idea. And I couldn't really hate him for this, to be honest, because he quickly grew on me. You soon find out that he's just a big ol' softy who tried to preserve heliocentrism in his own way, burning all his records and seeing the best way of continuing this legacy would be through the book Oxy was writing. However, things go south for them, causing them to lose everything they had worked on, almost breaking the chain. One of the scariest moments of the series in my opinion. But Badini is able to pull one final gambit to preserve the essence of heliocentrism at the cost of wiping out his and Oxy's name from the records of history. And yet, even he, a man who wanted all the credit, ended up choosing the idea over his own legacy. With all the great lengths all the characters go through for the sake of this idea, underneath all this historical drama, Orb asks, is it really worth it? Not in a cynical or rhetorical gotcha kind of way, but as a genuine open question that it puts to every character and by extension, you the viewer. Is it worth dedicating your life to an idea you'll never see vindicated? Is it worth the risk and isolation that comes with sticking with something you believe in? Well, the different characters we experience throughout the story all arrive at different answers. Some find peace with the sacrifice, some never really do. Some of them pass the idea forward with nothing but hope for the future, while others pass it forward almost by accident through passing conversation. The fact that there is no set answer on this question is an answer itself. We get to see both sides of the spectrum. It's able to paint this dedication as a beautiful and liberating thing, while still showing how restrictive and destructive it can be to a person. And I think the fact that heliocentrism, being the catalyst for this, a belief that we the audience already know to be true, adds a meta layer to the whole experience. It is 100% the truth, there is no mystery behind it, so it makes it all the more interesting watching people fight for or against it. Orb tries to tell you that just because it's true doesn't mean the truth will win. There is no cosmic mechanism ensuring that the right idea eventually reaches the right people. All there is the decision to try, and then the next person's decision to try, and then the next. This is what makes Novak such a compelling antagonist to the system. He is the antithesis of what the protagonists stand for. He's a man who actively engages in the suppression of the truth, never once questioning why he's doing what he's doing. We watch him win over and over again, his actions actively hindering the truth of this idea spreading. It can be downright frustrating because at some point it feels like even God is on his side. But despite dealing with all these so-called heretics over and over, he never stops to think why it is they believe in this idea so strongly. Why go through great lengths for a path that will ultimately lead to their death? It says a lot about a man so deep in stagnation going up against an idea that only gets refined and grows as time passes. He's a man who doesn't really think about the future. He doesn't come off as being interested in leaving some kind of legacy or passing something on to the next generation. Proof being how he hides his job of being an inquisitor to his daughter and how unbothered he looks when it comes to training new recruits. He's comfortable in doing things that doesn't require him to think, and even when he is forced to actually reason these things, he still ends up denying the truth right before him. And that is what makes him the perfect antagonist to a story like this. Orb doesn't try to be a story about winning, the protagonists don't get vindicated and the audience doesn't get to feel satisfied about it. Orb isn't interested in selling you that satisfaction. It's set in a period where the truth doesn't win within the story's time frame. The characters we follow are not the famous names from history books. They are the unnamed people who existed before the famous ones, the people who kept the candle lit in the dark, also someone else could eventually use it to start a fire. And the anime asks you to find meaning in that. To sit with these people who weren't heroes in the conventional sense, who didn't leave any legacies behind, and ask yourself if their lives mattered in any way whatsoever. The answer is obviously yes, but Orb doesn't let you arrive at that answer so cheaply. For me, I had my answer towards the end of the anime. Watching Draka take her last breath filled me with a lot of stress and anxiety, because at that point she felt like the last person standing between heliocentrism and complete erasure. Every person before her had given everything they had and it still wasn't enough. And now here she was, the final link to this chain that had already cost so many people so much, and she was gone. I kept asking myself why. Why did Badini fold under pressure and reveal the stone chest to Novak after everything he said to Oxy about facing their torture regardless? Why did Draka burn the book? Why did Yolanta blow herself up? Why did they keep making decisions that felt like they were undoing all the work that came before them? I was honestly pretty angry about the whole thing, because from the outside looking in, it felt like there could have been another way, some less costly option they couldn't just see or wouldn't take. But then the final episode happened, and I watched something as small and unassuming as the title of a book make it across time into the future. Not the full story, not the names of the people who died for it, just the title with the faintest echo of everything they had carried. And then it hit me. Something about that made me realize that I had been asking the wrong question all this time. I kept asking why they made those choices, looking for some grand strategic reason, some deeper logic behind the sacrifice, but there wasn't any. There never was. They believed in something, and that was it. No complicated calculation behind it, no guarantee of outcome, no assurance that any of it would matter. They just believed and they acted on it, and when the pressure came, they made human decisions, not the perfect ones. And that's actually the most honest thing Orb does. It never lets these characters be symbols. They were just people. Flawed people who often made the wrong calls at the worst possible moments, but despite all of that, the idea survived regardless. There's a line Novak delivers early in the story that I kept turning over in my head throughout the whole watch. It's the simplest things that seem to trouble people the most. He means it as a dismissal, a way of writing off the people he spent his entire career trying to silence. But by the end of the story, it reads completely differently. Because he's right, just not in the way he intended. The simplest things do trouble people the most. The simple belief that the earth moves. The simple hope that someone in the future might be better off for knowing it. The simple decision made over and over again by person after person across time to keep going even when keeping going made no logical sense. That simplicity was the whole point. Orb is a heavy watch with a lot of philosophical weight behind it, and I'm not going to pretend it's for everyone. The dialogue is dense, the references to historical philosophy come thick and fast, and there will be stretches where you feel the full difficulty of what it's asking you to sit with. But it earns every single bit of that difficulty, and it will leave a mark on you in a way you won't expect. If anything I've said today convinced you to give it a shot, you already know what to do, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and as always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.